Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever the case may be. I thought I would do another video similar to my video called More Than a Carpenter and just talk about how I get into carpentry and a little bit of my background. I'm closing in on 10,000 subscribers and I appreciate all your views and your wonderful comments. And I just thought I'd explain a few things about what finishing touch carpentry is all about and a little bit about me. So I got into carpentry right out of high school. Worked for a prefab company. First I started making trusses. Then we got into building prefab garages in the shop. And eventually, by the time I was 18 years old, I was, framing houses in this prefab shop. So 18, 19 years old in that area. And as luck would have it, the foreman of the shop quit to go on his own, and I ended up being a foreman of a prefab shop. That said, there's like three young guys my age working for me. But anyway, we started hammering out prefab homes and trusses and that sort of thing. Built some stairs. Back in those days, we would draw the lines out and cut out the channels for the wedges and so on, risers and treads with a skill saw, and then hammer them out with a chisel. So I guess that would be the place where I started enjoying building stairs. What happened from there was I was accepted as an apprentice with a local carpenter in Dryden, Ontario, which probably most of you won't know where that is, but it's in northwestern Ontario, pretty cold part of the world. And I started registered apprentice working for a carpenter who built houses from scratch, but also did a lot of finishing work. So that's where I got my sort of entry point there. And the year that I got married, I guess I was 19 at the time, my wife-to-be and I built a house in Dryden, and I was able to build the trusses and frame the walls in the workshop during the winter. And then as soon as spring rolled around, probably around this time of year, it's April 11th today, we got busy digging a hole, rented forms. I had no idea what I was doing when it came to concrete work, but we rented forms, did our own basement. It was a split level home, and it worked out really well. Then in the years following, working as an apprentice was basically, I guess in a roundabout way, discouraged by my journeyman for pursuing the carpentry career path, just because the interest rate on homes was 18%. For somebody buying a house was basically like buying a house on a credit card. So the housing starts were low. I was already a volunteer fireman at the time. My boss was as well. And I found that I really enjoyed emergency services work. And I chose, instead of fire department, I chose policing as a career path. So I switched out of carpentry in 1981 and joined the Thunder Bay Police Force. It was known as the Force back in those days. It's since changed because, I guess that's a little bit too aggressive sounding. Yeah, so I joined the police force in 81 and continued fostering my carpentry skills. We built another house together in Thunder Bay, this time a 4-way split. That was a lot of fun. Of course, when you're in your 20s, you have all sorts of energy for doing that kind of thing. I continued on with carpentry all through my policing career. Sold that house that we built, bought another built house. Well, I guess there was 2 or 3 houses that we moved to and renovated, and I got my immersion into finishing work, doing cabinetry for myself and cabinet job for a couple of different people. And then after I retired from policing in 2011, after 30 years of service, I went back into carpentry. Now, when I went back into carpentry after policing, initially I worked for another carpenter, another company that needed a sort of a main carpenter on staff. And I worked for him for a couple of months and really enjoyed that. I found that as much as I loved my retirement, I could hunt and fish, check my trail cams and do all those sorts of things. Some of you may know that I'm also an outdoor writer, and I wrote lots of articles on fishing and hunting. Probably almost every fly fishing magazine in North America in the 90s, I had an article in at one point or another, and that was pretty cool. I also did some guiding, and that was fun, but I soon found that really enjoyed building stuff. And whether it was cutting firewood or putting up a tree stand or helping somebody build a deck or whatever, I found that that was much more fulfilling than sitting on a field waiting for a deer to come out for days on end. So eventually that opportunity to work for another carpenter came up, and I did that, like I said, for a couple of months, and then found that other people involved in the business were a little demanding, a little difficult for me to deal with. And I thought, well, after 30 years of being a cop, I don't want to be bossed around and treated like an inferior. So anyway, I started my own business, and I called it Finishing Touch Carpentry. Now, when I started that business, I was mainly focused on small rentals, finishing work, and that sort of thing. I think one of the first jobs I had was doing a big railing system on a custom home, and that really went well. And I discovered that there was a niche in Thunder Bay that needed to be filled. Not many people were doing that kind of work, and one of the suppliers that I dealt with said that, boy, if you can build stairs and you can do railings, there's lots of work. And in fact, there's not many people that we would recommend other than you. So that was a really good sort of sign that maybe this was an avenue for me to pursue. The dog has found a coffee cup to run around with. That's one of her things. You'd never know she's almost 6 years old. But anyway, round about this time also, I had accrued enough carpentry hours before I even got on the police force that qualified me to write my carpentry exam. And Canada has a system called the Red Seal trades system, and I wrote my exam, got my papers probably around 2013 or something like that. Obviously it wasn't something that was necessary, but I felt like it was something I wanted to do. So to fill in the blanks on the timeline, when I retired from policing when I was 51, and I started finishing touch carpentry probably when I was 53. So I say that to people that are listening that, you know, are in that age bracket and they want to do a career related to woodwork. You know, it's not too late. I really enjoyed it. Both my son-in-laws and one other fellow were my apprentices. My son actually is my cabinet maker apprentice, as I got that certification later on as well. So it's been kind of a cool journey, and I really learned a lot about carpentry, finishing carpentry and railings, and it certainly seemed like there wasn't many people doing that kind of work, at least doing it well. So I stuck with it. Now, as far as the YouTube channel goes, I started that in January of 21. Had a lot to do with encouragement from my son. He really encouraged me, and he said, "Dad, you're a really good teacher," which was news to me. He encouraged me that I was a really good teacher and I knew how to explain things. And he said, "You should really have a YouTube channel." So I started the YouTube channel and, you know, had varied success with different videos. One of the first good videos I had was the one on making the double doors for a fancy garden shed that I built for a really nice customer. And I would say one of the benefits of being a police officer for 30 years, I was involved in all sorts of, serious investigations, homicide investigations, and that sort of thing. And you really learn a lot about human behavior, and you learn some things about, forensic patterns with people. And, I use those skills to vet my customers. And I would say that by and large, with very few exceptions, I've had very good success with picking good people to work for. And I would say that if you're interested in starting a business and doing quality work, especially finishing work, whether it's furniture or doors or stairs or whatever, pick your customers carefully. Don't underestimate the value of your work, and don't price your work too cheaply, because when that happens, you attract the wrong customers, quite frankly. If you're a bargain rate carpenter, then you attract bargain hunters. And not that, the high-end, real rich customers can be difficult too, of course, but that was really a learning curve there, is, applying my people skills to figure out what were the right customers and what customers to avoid. Oh, she's on point. Something in there. I'm not sure if it's a grouse or what it is. What do you think, Autumn? Yeah, so continuing right along here, I guess there was a grouse there at one point. But anyhow, another thing that sort of shaped finishing touch carpentry was that a lot of compliments from people. We work in people's homes, of course, which is not always easy. And they kind of noted, well, you guys aren't yelling at each other and you're not using a bunch of foul language and so on. I took that as a real nice compliment. If you follow my channel and you've watched any number of my videos, you'll know that I'm a Christian, and guys that work for me some were Christians as well, and I was very careful on who I selected to work with me for that very reason, because we're working in people's homes. And also during this time, I had a couple of guys that were in the Teen Challenge Addiction Recovery Program, and that is a Christian recovery program. And whether you follow Christianity as a belief system or not, I can tell you from what I know of addiction recovery from working with these guys, of course there's girls in the program as well, that faith-based addiction recovery is far more successful than secular recovery programs. But that's an aside. It was very encouraging to work with people recovering from addiction that were newborn Christians, I would say, and help shape them and help instill in them work ethic and honesty and all those sorts of positive things that comes from working with your hands. Oh, that was easy.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I've got, at this point in time, this will be a video that appears after I've hit the landmark of 90 videos on my channel. And of course, love if you watch every one of those 90 videos and give me a thumbs up on each one. And I can tell you that YouTube is a difficult go. I spend a lot of time and effort goes into making the videos and to, getting the right kind of video footage and all this sort of thing. And it does not pay very well at all. I mean, if I was doing it by the hour, it would be better for me to have a paper route. Now, I know there is a potential of doing really well with YouTube, but there's just a lot of competition and a lot of really highly skilled people doing YouTube, and you know, they deserve having a really good income from it. Now, just to clarify what I'm talking about, this is not a way for me to ask for money or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. I'm just letting you know the reality of it. And, you know, I don't do it for money. I do it so I can pass on my skills. I know that I've helped carpenters all over the world with different projects, and I get some awesome feedback. And that's really what fuels my desire to keep the YouTube channel going. It is frustrating. There are times where I'll create a video and I'll think, boy, this should be really good, and it doesn't do very well. Then yeah, those roots or the stumps are annoying, eh? So you could film from there, just as we put this sheet on.
All right, but Ken doesn't want to be in the picture.
No, I'm not dressed.
You do not want to be in the picture.
No,
You look good.
edit that right out.
And yet there are other times I do a video and I'm kind of unhappy with it. The door video would be an example of a video that I wasn't happy with, but it did really well. So that's the secret, is finding things that people want to watch. And now, as I continue on, I no longer have employees, so I don't have a cameraman with me or a camera woman with me when I'm working. Alden was my last employee. He's gone on to an apprenticeship with a house builder, and he's just a prince of a young man. He does a really good job at filming, and I did get him to film a previous video called What's in a Stairmaker Shop. So you're going to see that I have a whack of tools in my collection, and lots of them are really good tools, as you can tell. And I just want to make it clear that I have a police pension, so I don't need to make a living at my carpentry or my YouTube. So I can afford to take a little bit of profit I make and buy nice tools. Now that I'm working on my own, I do take on a lot less work, but I'm a lot more focused on stair and railing stuff. I'd like to get into making some tables and bed frames and some of the things that I can do inside my shop. I've got lots of grandchildren and I've had them in some of my videos, and they enjoy seeing themselves on camera. It's been a really enjoyable journey in that respect. Now, I also want to just make it clear that this is not a video where I'm trying to convert people to Christianity. This is just me. This is what I'm all about. I do the work to the best of my ability for my customers and for stuff I do myself, because that is part of the Christian work ethic, to do things as if you're working for the Lord. I've got aging parents. They're both 93. I've got a mother-in-law that's 93 as well, and a wonderful family, and that needs to remain first. But anyway, I thought a little bit about doing this kind of video. Certainly not something that's going to go off the charts as far as popularity, but I thought it wouldn't hurt to spend a few minutes talking about who I am and what I do. When it comes to policing, in fact, had breakfast with a retired police officer that worked with me on the tactical team, and this morning actually, and he was probably the best officer I had on my team. He was a sniper. Talked about a couple of calls we had where we could have lost our lives, and where we almost had to take a life. And I just want you to know that if you're a police officer anywhere in the world, or if you're a emergency services worker or a soldier, I want you to know that I appreciate what you do very much, and I have a lot of sympathy for police officers and soldiers and emergency services people, because they do a job right now with not a lot of support. Certainly there are people that always support us, but there's lots of people that don't. And if you watch the news, you'll know what I'm talking about. What other job is there where you go to work, put your uniform on, and you could lose your life? You could be required to take somebody's life. And then when you do, if you make a mistake in any regard, you could end up with a criminal record, or being charged with a criminal offense, or even in some cases going to jail. But that's the society we live in right now, and it's very difficult for those people to kind of hold their head high sometimes, because it's a very demanding job. But in any case, if you're a police officer or in the emergency services or soldier, or even if you're sympathetic to the work that they do around the world to keep the peace, keep people safe, know that I appreciate and love the brotherhood and sisterhood of policing family. In particular, I guess I was a police officer for 30 years. That's where my sympathies lie the most. But in any case, that's a little bit about me and Finishing Touch Carpentry. I hope you enjoyed this little video, and that you'd share it with somebody that would appreciate it, and do whatever you can to support the channel. Anyway, I'll continue on my walk. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.